Hi, this is Maggie. Thank you for stopping by Crafts the Charm today. I'm so glad you're here. So I've decorated my mantle sort of tropical for the summer, and I have this leaf-shaped tray, but nothing to put in it. So I thought it would be fun to make some tropical spheres. So that's what we're going to do today. I want to start with some twine balls, and these are sort of modeled after willow balls. But I don't have any willow, so we're going to make these out of twine, and I'm going to do it two different ways. So the first way that we're going to do it is I'm going to use this plastic ball that's meant to be filled, and these are the ones that I used for my nautical buoys. These aren't the ones that I used for the nautical buoys. I gave that to my mom. So I'm going to lay the two halves down, cover them with cling film or plastic wrap, and I'm going to mix water and white glue, or PVA glue, school glue. You want to mix some water in there so that it can soak into the twine. Otherwise the glue is a little bit thick and it doesn't make the twine wet. So mix that together until it's just a little bit runny. And I'm going to cut some pieces of twine so that they're basically half the circumference of the ball so that they will drape over the ball. And I'm going to cut some that are longer. And I'm just going to soak those in the glue water mixture and then wipe off the excess, drape the ones that are half the length of the circumference over each half of the ball, and then wrap the others sort of randomly over those and around the ball just to get a little bit of structure. And after I've draped them all over, I'm just going to use a little bit of the extra glue mixture and just put it over, especially all of the places where the twine crosses, and just get it nice and saturated and stuck together. And I'm going to let that dry overnight. Now this is the next morning, and I'm going to very carefully remove that from the ball in the plastic wrap. So just a little bit of wiggling and that will come off, and you can peel the plastic wrap off, and you can see that it is quite stiff. So I'm going to try to stick those together and then wrap more twine around to get a sphere shape. The ends were a little bit long, so I'm going to trim those off. And then once again, I'm going to mix up glue and water and soak some pieces of twine in that, form my two halves into a ball shape or sphere shape, and then wrap the twine around as best I can. And I know this is going to take a few attempts, so I'll get some of it done and then I'll let it dry, and then I'll do a little bit more and let it dry. And that is it for the first method. So just keep adding twine and letting it dry until you're happy with your sphere. Now the other method, the second method, is a little bit more like the way you would make a willow ball. And for this method, you would need wired twine. I don't have any wired twine. I know they sell it at the Dollar Tree. I couldn't find any, and I'm sure Amazon craft stores sell it. But I have this other sort of brown wrapped wire. I'm not sure what it is, paper maybe, and it looks sort of like twine, so I'm going to use this. And I'm going to make a smaller ball with this stuff. So I want to make some circles that are 2 inches in diameter. So I'm cutting about 8 inches. And I'm going to cut 3 lengths like that, make a circle by wrapping I'm going to call it twine, the wired twine, around itself, but leave a little bit extra. That's why I cut 8 inches. And then we're going to form these together to make a sphere. So 2 together and then 1 around the equator of that, and use those extra bits of wire to attach them together. And now I'm just going to cut some other pieces of this wired paper stuff. And what I'm going to do is wrap it around at some location and then just begin wrapping it over, under, just sort of randomly where there's a hole, where there's a gap. and just continue to do that until I'm happy with my sphere. So you can do it so that it's a lot more covered with wire than mine, or you can leave it more open like mine, you know, whatever you like to get the look that you want. And that's it. This way is definitely easier, but you need the wired twine, or you would need something like willow to do it with this method. Now for my other spheres, I picked up this set of 4 plastic balls. They look like wiffle balls to me at the Dollar Tree. And what I am going to do is basically paper mache or decoupage over this. So I'm again going to mix up the glue and water mixture. And for the first sphere, I'm going to use this thin paper bag. And I'm going to rip that into pieces so we get some pieces that are sort of organic looking. And I'm going to soak them, but there are basically 2 ways you can do this, and you'll see me do it both ways. One is you can soak the pieces and then apply them to the ball. And the other is you can use a paintbrush and put some glue on the ball, and then put the piece on the ball, and then put glue over the piece of paper. I like to soak thicker paper like this. I think the paintbrush method probably works a little better with thinner paper. So once I had this completely covered, I set it down to dry, and in fact I put it out on a hot sunny day to dry, and it dried very quickly. But I did pick it up periodically so that it wouldn't stick to the plastic mat that I was drying it on, and smooth it out. Otherwise, you might want to leave a blank spot that it sits on and then fill that in later. And when it was done drying, there were a few spots, so I just put more paper over those spots, and then this ball was done. I really love the way this looks. I like that you have some darker pieces and some lighter pieces. I think it's a beautiful natural texture, so I'm going to leave this just as it is. Now for the other 3 balls, I am going to give them a tissue paper texture, and I started by covering them with tissue paper, but when they dried, you could really see those holes in the wiffle balls. I thought that maybe they would dry a little more opaque. So what I decided to do was to cover them with paper towel and then put the tissue over the paper towel. Now you can still see the holes, but they're much less obvious. And I'm going to be painting these balls, and I think with paint, especially chalk paint, that will hide the holes. So just paint your water glue mixture on, rip up your paper towel, put a piece of paper towel over, paint glue over it, and then once it's covered, you can still do it while it's wet, put the tissue paper over that. Unless you like the texture of the paper towel, I really prefer the texture of the tissue paper, but the paper towel is thicker. And I did these in 2 stages. I did the top, let it dry, and then I did the bottom. And that way I didn't have to worry about it sticking to a surface and having to continually turn it. Now for one of these, I am going to do a cutout on my Cricut out of foam. And I found this tropical leaf. I did a search on tropical leaf and I clicked the free button, and I found some monstera leaves, which are beautiful, but this one, which is more fern-like, I don't know the name of this leaf though, is what I wanted. And I'm going to scale that down to 2 inches by 3 inches. And I have a scrap piece of foam, so I'm going to position 6 of these so that they'll fit on my scrap piece of foam. And then I'm going to select them and click attach so that Cricut Design Space doesn't reposition them, because I know where my foam is. And then just cut that out on the Cricut. Now it asked me to load the deep point blade, and it seemed happy with the blade that I had in. It didn't cut all the way through, so I think I can adjust the height of that blade. I'm not sure. I'm not an experienced Cricut user, and I didn't adjust the height of the blade. I also didn't move the rollers, and I should have, because they made an impression in the foam. But of course, you can turn these over and use the other side, the side that the rollers didn't roll over. That was really not a problem for me. So now I did have to sort of pull them apart a bit. Now I just have never done any foam on my Cricut before, so maybe this is normal, or maybe it should have cut through deeper. But basically I found if you pull at the sort of lines at the seams, then it comes right apart. I just did it carefully. I didn't rip quickly because I didn't want to rip through the foam. And on a couple of pieces, I did have a few little spots where I did rip through the foam, but that's not a problem because we're just going to be gluing this to one of our balls. So here I have one of my white balls, and I'm just going to glue these 6 leaves down to the white ball. And I decided to use hot glue because I was afraid that white glue might not stick. And the hot glue worked fine, I just wanted to make sure I put a thin layer on. Now the 6 were not quite enough to cover the entire ball, so I took a scrap piece and traced around one of the reverse pieces, one of the leftover pieces, and cut that out and just cut some pieces out of it that would fit in that remaining space. Now for this second ball, I have these wooden shapes. They're wooden leaves from the Dollar Tree, and I knew that they would be a little bit too big for the ball, that they wouldn't curve around the ball, but I thought I would try them anyway. You'll have to tell me what you think of this one. I don't like it as much as the foam leaf one. And for this one I also used hot glue, and of course some of the hot glue squished out in those cutouts, but I definitely do not think that white glue would work here just because they don't even press down to the ball. So if you do this, just be really careful not to put too much hot glue on. And I started by just putting them around sort of the middle of the ball, but I didn't quite hit the middle there. And then I did some pieces sort of pointing up towards the other end, the poles of the ball. And then I decided to do a flower at one of the poles. And I didn't have as much space at the other pole because I didn't quite hit the middle of the ball, but I did another flower. The first flower had 6 petals and the second flower only has 3. In retrospect, I think if I were going to use these leaves again, I think I would do all flowers over the ball. Alright, so I'm going to paint the balls now. So the ball with the foam leaves, I'm going to paint with Folk Art Home Decor chalk paint in Adirondack White. And mine, I've said before, I think is kind of chunky, so I have to mix it with water. But after I did the first side of this and let it dry, I thought I would try white acrylic paint, so I used apple barrel acrylic paint in white on the other side, and that worked just fine. I was afraid I wouldn't get the coverage I needed with acrylic paint, but you could also use acrylic paint on this, and if it's a little bit runnier than this chalk paint, it goes into the cracks a little better. But so basically, I just want to make sure I get the leaf and into the cracks of the ball with this paint. And then the white ball that I didn't do anything to, I also painted with the Adirondack White. Now, for the ball with the wood leaves, I'm going to use this Craftsmart Muted Aqua, Delta Ceramcoat in Jubilee Green, and Apple Barrel White. I know it's 3 different brands. This is just what I had. And I'm going to mix just a little bit of the Jubilee Green with a little bit of white. That's going to be sort of an accent color that I drag through the blue. So I'm going to paint this entire ball with the blue paint, but while it's still wet, drag a little bit of that white-green mix through it. And we're just going to paint everything, so I'm going to try to get under and inside those leaves and the sides of the leaves and get the white ball. And once those have dried, the 2 leaf balls, I have these 2 browns. I was going to choose between them. I have Decor Americana in Mississippi Mud, and I have Apple Barrel in Burnt Umber. And I decided the Mississippi Mud was the color I wanted for this project. So I dry brushed that over the blue ball with the wood leaves, and the whole ball, all the leaves, and I started light, but I decided that a lot of the dry brushing was what I wanted. Now with the white ball with the foam leaves, I brushed it across each leaf. So it's just going to sort of touch the edges of the leaves. And I just did that all over the ball. Really don't want to do too much here. Now for the last white ball, I thought I would wrap it in some wire, but the only goldish wire that I have is this floral wire from the Dollar Tree, and I felt it was just too thin. So I ended up abandoning that idea. I just really didn't like it. So I just left it white, and I think if I were going to do something with this ball, I'd do another leaf treatment like the foam leaves. But I would love to know your ideas for this sad little white ball. So here they are. I would love to know what you think. Please tell me in the comments. I'd love to know if you have a favorite ball and how you would do them differently. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy this sort of content, please subscribe to Crafts the Charm. Thank you for spending time with me today. Take care.